This happened about a year ago, and to this day, I still don't know if what I experienced was real or some kind of elaborate setup. But what scares me the most is that I never found any proof that it ever existed. It just disappeared. I've always been into weird and creepy internet stories. I'd spend hours on forums reading about unexplained disappearances, unsolved mysteries, and the infamous dark web. But no matter how many horror stories I read, I never actually believed them. One night I was up late scrolling through obscure message boards when I came across a post titled, "Do not join this forum." The title was intriguing, but the post itself was strange. It was just a single paragraph written by a deleted user saying, "If you find the link, don't click it. If you click it, don't make an account. And if you make an account, never interact." That was it. No details, no explanation. Just a vague warning. Of course, I was curious. I checked the comments, expecting to see people debunking it, but there weren't many replies, just a few users saying things like, "It's real, stay away." That only made me more interested. I scrolled through the thread until I finally found what I was looking for. A link. It was buried in a reply from another deleted user, but it was still active. The URL was a long string of random letters and numbers, something you'd only find on a deep website. I hesitated for a second, then clicked it. The screen went black for a moment before loading a plain white page with a single question in the center. "Do you want to enter?" There were two options, yes and no. At this point, I was starting to feel uneasy, but I told myself it was probably just a weird role-playing form or some creepy pasta-inspired ARG. So I clicked yes. The page instantly changed, revealing a simple black website with a blank white text box asking for a username and password. There was no option to create an account, but at the bottom there was an even stranger button, Generate Credentials. I clicked it, and almost immediately random text appeared in the fields. A username I didn't recognize, and a long scrambled password. Before I could even react, the page refreshed, and suddenly I was in. The form looked empty. There were only a few discussion threads, each titled with vague names like New Arrival and The Watchers, but no descriptions, no dates, no visible users online. I clicked on the first thread. It was filled with messages, but none of them made sense. They were just random strings of numbers and symbols, as if someone had encrypted them. Others looked like they were written in different languages, but when I tried translating them, they didn't exist. I was about to leave when I noticed something at the bottom of the page, a single new message. It wasn't coded. It wasn't in another language. It was in plain English. "Welcome." I stared at it for a moment, feeling an uncomfortable chill run down my spine. That message hadn't been there when I first opened the thread. Someone had just posted it. Before I could do anything, a pop-up appeared on my screen. "Would you like to introduce yourself?" Two options, yes and no. I didn't click anything. Then the options changed. "You will introduce yourself." My mouse moved on its own. I yanked my hand away from the touchpad as the cursor hovered over yes. My heart was racing. It had to be some kind of JavaScript trick, a pre-programmed animation, right? Then the chat box opened. A new message appeared. "We see you." I slammed my laptop shut. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My body was frozen. I told myself it was all fake, some weird hacker forum meant to mess with people. But then, my phone vibrated. I looked down. Unknown number. I didn't answer. A second later, another notification popped up. New message from an unknown contact. I slowly unlocked my phone, my hands shaking. The message just said, "Look outside." I sat there, my entire body tensed. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to move. Then my phone buzzed again. Another message. "Now!" I swallowed hard and slowly turned toward my window. At first, I didn't see anything. It was past midnight, and my apartment was on the third floor. But as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I noticed something across the street. A person, standing completely still, facing my window. They weren't moving. They weren't even holding a phone or looking around, just standing perfectly still, staring straight at my apartment. I pulled the blinds down and backed away. My chest felt tight. I grabbed my laptop and, without even opening it, removed the battery. Then I turned off my phone and sat in my room listening. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, whoever had been outside was gone. I turned my phone back on, dreading what I might see, but there were no messages, no missed calls, no trace that anything had happened. I checked my laptop next. When I powered it on, it booted up normally. No pop-ups, no forum, nothing strange. It was like none of it had ever existed. I searched for the forum again, trying to find the link or the original post where I had discovered it, but it was gone. The thread had been deleted. The username I had been given didn't work anymore. The URL led to a blank error page. It was like the whole thing had been erased overnight, but sometimes I wonder if that's really the case, because every now and then I still get messages from unknown numbers. No threats, no warnings, just a single word every few months. Watching? I've always been fascinated by internet horror stories. Those creepy, mysterious things people claim to have seen on the dark web. Stories about illegal marketplaces, human experiments, and worst of all, red rooms. Most people believe they're just myths, live torture streams where people pay to decide what happens to a victim in real time. I used to think they were fake too, until the night I saw one for myself. This happened about 2 years ago. I was living alone in a small apartment, working a dead-end job, and spending most of my nights on my laptop. I had always been curious about the dark web, but I never took it seriously. I figured it was just a bunch of scams, black market drug deals, and hackers flexing their skills. One night I was on a dark web forum when I found a post that caught my eye. The title was simple: Live stream tonight. Real pain, real blood, real death. The comments were full of people arguing. Some were calling it fake. Others were saying it was the real deal. One comment stood out to me: only for true believers. Watch at your own risk. Underneath was a link. I hesitated. It was obviously fake, just some twisted hoax to scare people. But the curiosity was eating at me. I told myself I'd just click and see what it was, then close it. So I did. The screen went black for a few seconds, then a chat box appeared. At first it was empty, then messages started popping up. Showtime in 5 minutes. I have 2 BTC ready. Hope this is real. Don't disappoint us this time. I felt my stomach twist. It didn't feel like a normal chat room. Then the screen changed. A live video feed appeared. The room was dark, lit only by a single dim light bulb swinging from the ceiling. The walls were concrete, cracked, and covered in what looked like dried blood. In the center of the room was a chair, and tied to that chair was a man. His head was slumped forward. His wrists and ankles were zip-tied to the chair. A bag covered his head. I felt my pulse in my throat. A figure stepped into frame, dressed in all black, wearing a white mask with no expression. They held up a small whiteboard with something written on it. The bidding starts now. The chat exploded. People were bidding in Bitcoin, their usernames appearing next to insane amounts of money. Then a new message appeared. Top bidder gets first request. Seconds later, a username popped up on the screen. Bloodlust 89-3.5 BTC. The masked figure turned to face the camera. Slowly, they raised their hand and held up a hammer. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. A message appeared in the chat. Break his fingers, one by one. The masked figure nodded. Then they walked toward the man in the chair. I slammed my laptop shut. I felt sick. My hands were shaking. But the worst part? I could still hear it. A loud, wet crack. A muffled, agonized scream. I pushed my laptop off my desk and stumbled back, my heart pounding. I needed to forget this. I needed to pretend I never saw it. But then, my phone buzzed. I looked down. Unknown number. I hesitated, then picked it up. At first, there was silence. Then a voice, low, robotic, and distorted. Why did you leave? I hung up immediately. My entire body was trembling. Seconds later, another text came in. You were the next bidder. I stared at my screen in disbelief. That didn't make sense. I never placed a bid. Then my laptop, which was still closed, turned back on. I watched in horror as the screen flickered and the dark web chat room reopened by itself. And in the chat, a new bit appeared. Under my real name. $10,000, next request. Do it to me. I didn't type that. I didn't type any of it. I grabbed my laptop, yanked the power cord out, and threw it in my closet. My breathing was erratic. I was trying to convince myself that this was some elaborate scare tactic, a way to make people think they were part of the game. But then, my phone buzzed again. Another text. This time it was a picture. I felt my blood turn to ice. It was a photo of my apartment, taken from outside my window. I didn't sleep that night. I packed a bag and drove to my friend Jason's house. I never told him what happened. I just crashed on his couch and ignored my phone for 2 days. When I finally worked up the nerve to check it again, all the messages were gone. The number was disconnected. I got rid of my laptop the next day. I moved out of that apartment a month later. To this day, I don't know if what I saw was real or if it was some elaborate psychological trap designed to scare people. But every now and then, I think about that man in the chair, and I wonder if someone watched him die. Or worse, if someone's watching me. I was never the kind of person to mess around with the dark web. I'd heard all the horror stories, people getting hacked, tracked, or even worse. I always thought those were just urban legends meant to scare people away from going too deep online. But after what happened to me, I know now that some of those stories are real. This happened about a year ago, and I still get chills thinking about it. I was home alone one night, just mindlessly scrolling through Reddit, when I stumbled across a thread talking about a secret game hidden in the dark web. The post was vague, but people in the comments claimed it was an interactive challenge that knew things about you. Things you never told anyone. Some said it was just a myth, while others claimed they had played and regretted it. Most people said not to look for it. That should have been my first warning sign. But I was curious. I didn't go looking for it right away, but later that night, I received a strange email. There was no sender, no subject line, just a single sentence and a link. Are you ready to play? At first, I thought it was spam, but then I remembered the post I had just read. It was probably just a coincidence, right? I don't know why, but something inside me told me to click it. The screen went black for a few seconds, and then a chat box appeared. No login, no homepage, just a chat with a blinking cursor. Then a message appeared. Welcome to the game. Answer honestly, and you might survive. I felt a chill run down my spine. It was just some edgy internet game, but something about it felt off. Then the first question appeared. What is your full name? I laughed a little. Clearly, it was just trying to scare me. I typed a fake name and hit enter. For a second, nothing happened. Then the screen flickered and a new message appeared. Incorrect. Before I could react, the chat box typed out a new message. My actual full name. I froze. My heart started pounding. I never entered my real name. Maybe they pulled it from my email somehow. I told myself there was some kind of logical explanation, but my hands were already starting to sweat. Then another question appeared. Where do you live? I didn't type anything. My gut told me to just close the laptop. But before I could, the chat typed out my exact address. I pushed my chair back from my desk. My entire body went cold. There was no way. This wasn't some dumb game. I went to close the tab, but just as I reached for my mouse, my cursor started moving on its own. It scrolled back to the chat box and a new message appeared. You have 24 hours to play. If you refuse, we come to you. That's when I noticed something. My webcam light had turned on. I slammed my laptop shut. My heart was racing. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed. I looked down at the screen. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. The second I put the phone to my ear, I heard heavy breathing. Slow, deliberate. I didn't say anything. I just sat there listening. Then, in a low, distorted voice, they whispered, "We see you." I dropped my phone. My entire body was shaking now. How? My webcam was off. My phone camera was covered. Then I heard something outside my window. I turned my head slowly. A black van was parked across the street. No headlights, engine still running. I stood up and moved toward the window, trying to get a better look. The second I did, my phone buzzed again. A new message. Keep playing, or we come inside. I took a step back from the window, my breathing shaky. I thought about calling the police, but what would I even say? That I clicked on a weird link and now some hacker was threatening me? Then I remembered my neighbor had security cameras. I grabbed my keys and bolted out of my apartment. My neighbor was an older guy, always paranoid about crime, which was why he had cameras all over the complex. I knocked on his door frantically. When he answered, I barely let him speak before asking, "Hey, weird question. Your cameras, do they record outside?" "Yeah, why?" I hesitated. "There was a black van outside my place a few minutes ago. Did you see anything?" He gave me a confused look. "What van?" I felt my stomach twist. "It was parked right across the street." He shook his head. "There was nothing there, kid. I've been watching the cameras all night." I felt my blood go cold. I knew what I saw. I thanked him and went back inside, my hands shaking as I checked my phone again. The last message was still there. Keep playing, or we come inside. Then right in front of my eyes, a new message appeared. Check your closet. I felt my entire body go numb. Slowly, I turned my head toward my closet door. It was slightly open. I knew for a fact I had closed it before. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then I heard something, breathing. Coming from inside the closet, I ran. I grabbed my keys, bolted out the front door, and didn't stop running until I got to my car. I drove for hours, barely able to think straight. I didn't go home that night. I didn't even go back for my laptop. I never checked the closet. I don't know who they were. I don't know how they found me. But I've never clicked another dark web link again. And I never will. And that wraps up today's story. I really hope it resonated with you or gave you something to think about. Stories like these are what keep me passionate about creating, and your support makes it all worthwhile. If you've got any thoughts, opinions, or even your own experiences to share, don't hold back. Drop them in the comments. I'd love to start a conversation and hear from you. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like this, make sure you stick around. I've got plenty more coming that I think you'll love. Thanks so much for watching, for being here, and for supporting this journey. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.